America, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, although I want you guys just to hang out with me for a little bit. Let me talk to you just on this shooting. It was very surreal on the show yesterday. While I was talking about what was happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota, my daughter was texting my wife and me, locked down in her college with word of an active shooter on campus. The kids had locked themselves in a classroom, turned off the lights, moved the chairs so that no one from the door could see them, and were contemplating moving the bookcases in front of the door. My daughter told us she was the one who chose to block the door until the professor told her she needed to sit in her chair, and she told him she would not leave the door unless he was committed to blocking the door himself. All that was happening while I was dealing with a shooting in Minnesota. It turned out to be a false alarm. There have been a number of reports on college campuses and some high schools across the country of active shooters that have turned out to be false alarms. They're all coming apparently from the same number. It seems there's an active FBI investigation around the country about this happening. But I was literally getting real time play by play from my kid. We're not hearing shots. We're locked in the classroom. I block the door myself. Now the teacher's blocking the door. I'm reading this as I'm talking to you guys. It was a surreal moment yesterday. We know now more about the shooter. And I want to talk to you in a way I don't often talk. Yeah, a little bit of theological here, which I do, but not like this. I try to leave some of the stuff off the table, but I don't think I can today. One of the pictures that the shooter drew in his manifesto was a conversation with a monster, and wrote it in Russian, telling the monster to leave him alone. No, I'll control you, and ultimately consenting to control and violence. I we don't talk about things like demons and possession and stuff like that. We're a scientific 21st century culture, and I'm starting to wonder if we've got to resurrect some of the old language to deal with some of the things we're seeing, because this was demonic. This was real evil. And there are people who aren't Christians who say, and even some Christians who don't have a good answer for it. I'll give you the good answer. I'll give you my answer. Am I credible to give you the answer? I think I am. I have been to seminary. I haven't finished my degree, but I take in the classes. And I can tell you a very common Augustinian definition of evil is the absence of God. Christians for a long time wrestled with the answer: if God is good, why do bad things happen? If God is good, why does he let the bad things happen? And why do you get disease? Why do kids go into schools and shoot other kids? Why do wars happen? And the answer is that evil is the absence of God. There is a void to be filled with God or not. And if not, it is evil. And pure evil takes on malignancy that takes on an active presence. It's not something God created. God created angels who fell because they put pride above God, and he threw them out of heaven. And that is the embodiment of the demons led by Satan, a real being. One of the greatest tricks the devil ever pulled was to convince us he's not real. And modern society has no language to be able to deal with actual, real manifestations of evil. It's treated as mythology, it's treated as not real until you encounter it. And we encountered it yesterday, where a transgender shooter locked kids inside a church, barricaded the door so they could not get out, and then began opening fire through the windows. And that then gets to the question of motive and the motivation for the shooting. There are lots of conversations on television about motive and how they can't ascribe motive. And if you get my show notes today, I want to read you what I wrote. I think I got it better the first time around. There's no reason for me to not just tell you my and by the way, if you text Eric ERICK to 33777, the show notes today, they're not behind a paywall. If you go right now, if you text Eric ERICK to the phone number 33777, the very first link is the show notes. You can click it and see the actual show notes email today titled Monsters, Medicine, and More. It is not behind a paywall. I just want to read you this from me. But first, let me play this audio from Andrew McCabe on CNN that sets the stage for it.
And I think this is something that we've seen in other mass shootings. We've seen mass shooters who actually refer in their manifesto to previous shooters. But this one is really remarkable to me in that respect. I was looking at, I haven't seen the manifesto, so I can't say whether there are specific references to the 2023 Covenant School shooter in Nashville. But if you look at that situation and this one, there are remarkable similarities. So both were in their 20s, both targeted religious schools that they formerly attended.
What Andrew McCabe never gets at is the transgendering. Remarkable similarities, but not the transgendering. And then there's John Miller, a law enforcement expert on CNN.
Going through the writings, particularly going through the videos as the shooter laid out his weapons and held up each individual parts, what you saw there was a pervasive message of hate. Hate against blacks, hate against Jews, hate against God, and the target, of course, being a Catholic church. But there's also a degree of posturing there about what we're going to investigate it as. They're investigating it in support of the Minneapolis police who have a homicide case. The offender is dead. It is doubtful that anyone other than the offender, unless we learn something very new in the next couple of days, is going to be charged. I almost find the conclusion that it's a hate crime against Catholics premature.
Almost find it premature. He used a picture of Jesus for target practice. Oh, he had writings about Jews that were bad and about Donald Trump. ABC News, when they covered this, said Donald Trump's name was written on the barrel of the gun. They didn't say the word kill before Donald Trump, but that word was there. Where is your God now was written on the magazine. This is a evil shooter, and the media lacks the language. The press, even today, and this is what I got to, insists we don't know the shooter's motive despite the manifesto. This is in large part because the shooter actually hated life itself. In the conversation, the shooter draws in the picture with the demon. The shooter very clearly hates life and says he hates life. Now, I want to be charitable. I want to make a point here, and I need you to be charitable with me on this point. Even insane people, they tend to have motives. Even insane people tend to have motives. You need to understand that insane people have motives. For the sake of argument, let's just ensure that we all understand this, that there are rational motives. They have rational motives. And the media, when they use the word motive, it's a legal definition that they're going for, and they want to be sure what they have. With a legal motive, there are a lot of legal and police experts who, when they talk about motive, that's what they mean. And they want to be sure they have the motive. They don't want to speculate. They want precision. I think it's understandable for them to want to wait, even as we on social media are looking in real time at the manifesto, and we are ascribing a motive to the shooter that people in the media, while they're talking about it on TV, they're not scrolling their phones. They're not looking at YouTube. They don't know. They're waiting for stuff to come out, and they're waiting for positive confirmation from local law enforcement, so they're taking their time. As a matter of charity, be charitable and acknowledge that. We can understand the caution of the individuals, but it's also not rocket science, and this is the moment that charity must end, and we must go to some hard, plain truths. If the shooter shot up a synagogue, the media would immediately speculate on anti-Semitism. The media would even speculate that it was right-coded, more likely than not, particularly if it was a mosque. And they would talk about anti-Islamic hate and Islamophobia in the country, and they would ascribe that immediately to someone probably being on the right. If the shooter is white, they immediately ascribe it to possible white supremacy, waiting for the police to find out. And God forbid the shooter might have said something nice about Donald Trump at some point in the past. The conversations of all the talking heads on television will go to blaming MAGA immediately, and the reporters will fret and furrow their eyebrows and wonder about Donald Trump's culpability due to his rhetoric. Look at when Donald Trump nearly got shot. It turned out that shooter might have somewhere at some point expressed some kind word about Donald Trump in the past before turning. And they're like, we can't ascribe a motive. We have no idea what the motive is. This kid apparently at one point praised Donald Trump. We're so confused as to why he would shoot Donald Trump. But I bet it was Donald Trump's rhetoric. That's where the media win. It happens every damn time. Only when the shooter in this country targets Christians, particularly Christian kids, does the press insist on a lengthy period of time to assess the motive. And only when the shooter is transgender must we move on from discussing the shooter and go straight to gun control. When a transgender shooter shoots Christians, motive is never ascertainable, and only gun violence can be discussed. It's a pattern in the press and among the talking heads because it's related to their own biases. By the way, attacks on churches in the United States have skyrocketed, not just around the world, but attacks on churches and Christians, specifically for being Christian churches, skyrocketed in the United States. And do you know this? The Family Research Council put out a report. Have you heard it covered on any mainstream media outlet? The press of the Democratic Party don't actually see anything wrong with blocking Catholic charities from doing charitable work in the United States because of their policies on marriage and adoption. The press and the Democrats look at Jack Phillips, a Christian baker in Colorado, and he's the bigot. He's the bad guy. The secularists tied him to the Nazis, and they keep hauling him into court. The Democrats keep suing nuns, trying to get nuns to pay for abortion against their will. The media can't talk about violence being done against Christians in the United States and targeting Christians because they are complicit in the violence. I mean, the Christians are always the bigots. The Christians are always the bad guys. It's always the girls complaining about the boys in the girls' bathroom who are the bad guys. It's never the boys invading the girls' spaces. It's always the Christian baker not baking the cake for the gay marriage who's the bigot and the bad guy. The media itself is on the side that the shooters come from, so the media can't discuss the motives of the shooter because then you would ask the logical question. Where did the shooter come up with this hostility for the people of faith? And you would have to point to the conversations in the media and how they talk about them. Yesterday, they immediately went to attacking thoughts and prayers. And I said, and I stand by it, I'm going to show grace to the mayor of Minneapolis, who in the morning, while emotions are still raw and he's still processing what has happened, lashes out at thoughts and prayers are not enough. Many of you on social media, you're not going to show grace to the guy. I am because I am a Christian. I take my faith seriously. We're supposed to show grace to others. And when you're in the middle of a situation where you're confronted with a bunch of dead kids barricaded into a church and shot from the outside, your emotions are raw, you're going to be angry, and you might as well lash out. You probably will. I'm not going to excuse him for going on television later in the day and doubling down on the issue, nor am I going to excuse him for saying we can't talk about the transgender community, because I think we have to. But the very first time he did it, yeah. For others, though, no. It's kind of a rote incantation from them to blast people who say they're praying for the victims. But I want you to think about this as well, because it's more and more common to platform these people in the media without challenge. It's the same sort of evil. It's different manifestation, different form, and different level and different extent than the shooter going into the church. But if someone shot up a mosque and the Islamic leaders said we should offer prayers, would the American Press Corps mock them? I highly doubt it. But when a transgender 23-year-old locks the doors of a church and barricades the doors so kids can't get out and begins to open fire on the people in the church. And the American press corps itself, anchors, reporters, and pundits on television excoriate Christians for wanting to offer thoughts and prayers, which happened across multiple news networks yesterday. You're dealing with the same derivative of evil that led the shooter to shoot. And that is why the American media cannot process the motive of the shooter, because of their complicity in seeding the anti-Christian hatred within the narratives of the secular West today. They're complicit in this. They'll never acknowledge it, and they'll be mad at people like me for pointing it out.